Chapter 151. Jack swiftly led her into the forest. There was a treehouse in the forest, which Jerry showed her 2 days ago. Jack swept the fallen leaves away. Then, he led her into the underground secret base. It was completely dark underground, so Jack lit an oil lamp. The warm glow brightened up the whole base. When Olivia saw the things stored there, she was shocked. "Are these all yours?" she asked, pointing at the firearms and weapons hanging on the wall. The man responded in a low voice without explaining too much. Grabbing a small handgun, he placed it in Olivia's hand. The truth always sides with the strong. No matter what happens in the future, you need a weapon to protect yourself. Touching the heavy gun, Olivia had a nervous look on her face. She gulped. "You're giving this to me?" Under the mask, Jack's dark eyes gleamed earnestly. He said in a cold voice, "If you can't escape, I hope that it'll be your final way out." He pointed the gun at his chest. "Remember this spot and pull the trigger. It only takes one shot." He knew about her waking up from nightmares every night. He was quiet, but it didn't mean that he didn't care. If you don't want to have nightmares, you just have to end it at its source. Olivia nodded, frightened. "Come, I'll teach you how to use it." Even though Jack was injured, it didn't affect his movements at all. As he explained, he took the gun apart. "Before using the gun, you have to understand it so that you won't accidentally hurt yourself." "Got it." Olivia didn't decline his kindness. She didn't know what troubles she would face in the future. She was physically too weak, so it was nice to have a way to protect herself. Soon, she learned how to take the gun apart and reassemble it. A surprised look flashed across Jack's eyes. "Well done. Let's try using it next." He took Olivia to the shooting range. "See that bullseye? Aim at it and shoot." It was Olivia's first time holding a gun. She wasn't sure if she was excited or scared, but her arms wouldn't stop trembling. Then, she felt the man's warm chest leaning against her body. Jack put his arms around her from behind, as if embracing her. He placed his palm on her hand, saying, "Don't be afraid. Find the target, then shoot." Like this, the piercing sound of the gun exploded in Olivia's ears, threatening to rip her eardrums. The sound was so shocking that her heart almost stopped when she heard it in person. She stood where she was, feeling numb. There was a dazed expression on her face as she shivered uncontrollably. Like this. Get it. The man's warm breath reached her ears, pulling Olivia's thoughts back to reality. It was only then that Olivia realized something. Jack's posture looked like he was hugging her, and even his palms were placed firmly on the back of her hands. Olivia subconsciously tried to move away, but Jack moved faster than her. In a mere second, Jack had already stepped away and put some distance between them. His voice was uniquely low and hoarse. He said, "Try it. Remember, don't panic, and don't tremble. You have to aim properly. If you have the resolve to use this gun on that person, there's nothing else to fear. Either you or him will die, so you have to be firm. Being nice won't help you." Jack's words were sharp, but he was right. It was true that all her failures were caused by her soft-heartedness. She was too weak. She had allowed Marina, Ethan, or even random strangers to take advantage of her. When she thought of that, her gaze slowly grew determined. She lifted her arms again. Chapter 152. Yes, that's it. Be more determined. If you don't have the resolve, you'll still be the one getting hurt next time. Remember your past. With a bang, Olivia fired the gun. Her arms turned numb. She wasn't used to the strong recoil yet. Even though she didn't hit the bullseye, she managed to hit the target. Well done. You have to believe in yourself. Jack stood behind her again, adjusting her posture. Then, he said softly in her ear, "Olivia, may you be your own sun in the future. You won't need to borrow light from anyone else. You were born with wings, so you should be soaring in the sky. Don't stay on the ground any further." Olivia looked at the target in the distance. She pretended that it was her current self. She didn't know when it started, but her brilliant self had turned meek. She couldn't do anything but be controlled by others. Not just Ethan, but even Olivia herself hated what she looked like right now. Shooting forward, the bullet hit the bullseye. See, This is what you should be like. Jack let go of her. There isn't much here, but we do have plenty of bullets. Looking at Jack, Olivia had the urge to ask him about his identity. When she thought that everyone had their secrets, Olivia changed her mind. She said softly, "Thanks. For the next few days, she would be here every day." Jack didn't hide anything either. He taught her lots of ways and skills to fight. He even took her to hunt wild rabbits and chickens in the mountains. Olivia was a smart person. She was quick to pick up new skills, even shooting. In just a few days, she could already hunt on her own. She couldn't bring herself to hurt the rabbits at first, but now, she could skin them skillfully. She also cleaned fish and roasted them over an open fire. This was a life she had never experienced before. Jack seemed very experienced in survival skills. So, both his face and past were intriguing. Days like this caused her to forget her anxiety and the fear she had of Ethan. Every day, she would roam the mountains with Jack. She felt that her body had gotten much stronger. It was different from when it used to suffer from the side effects of chemotherapy. Back then, she would start gasping for breath after picking up pace a little. There wasn't any internet connection here, so it felt like she was closed off from the rest of the world. Olivia felt very fulfilled here. She would even follow Jack out to sea sometimes and sail on the raging ocean. She thoroughly enjoyed every single day here. When she was on the endless ocean, she would often see pods of dolphins. She also saw whales lazily coming up for air and sea turtles with seaweed hanging on their bodies. Jack told her that in spring, everything on the island would come back to life. All the flowers would be in full bloom. When that happened, not only would they get lots of fish, but the island would be extremely pretty as well. Olivia suddenly looked forward to it. She wanted to see the beautiful ocean and the lively island in spring. "What are you zoning out for?" Jack stuffed a cleaned apple into her hand. Olivia returned to her senses. She smiled. "I'm looking at that cherry tree. It should bloom in a few days. I'm suddenly looking forward to the flowers blooming in spring here. I'm imagining the beautiful sights." Jack's gaze passed over her face. "Yes, it's truly beautiful. I'll go check if there's fish in the cages we set up a few days ago." Olivia almost forgot about them. A few days ago, she weaved her first cage. She wondered if something interesting was trapped in it. "I'll go with you." Taking a bite of the apple, she followed behind Jack. She had gotten to know the island very well in the past few days. She followed Jack to the spot where they set up the cages before. One of the cages was located in a deeper part of the sea. Without another thought, Jack took off his clothes and jumped into the sea. Olivia was amazed at his health. She would start coughing if she was exposed to the wind for too long. Even though spring was getting closer, it was still quite cold out there. While she was thinking, she heard the man coming out of the water with a splash. Chapter 153. A naked and strong body came into view. Jack's skin was a little darker than Ethan's, and it was genuinely tanned. His shoulders were broad, and his waist was slim. The muscles on his chest were well defined. Like Ethan, there were some scars on his body as well. The water droplets rolled down his well-defined abs. The man was full of masculine charm. He held a cage in his arms. Behind him, the sun shone on the sea below, creating glowing ripples of light. Even though she couldn't see his face, she could sense the joy coming from his thin face. "It's a huge harvest." Jack stepped onto shore with his bare feet. The seawater streamed down the legs of his combat pants. With his movements, his muscles were displayed clearly. Olivia couldn't help but look away. "I'll light a fire to roast the fish with." "Okay, then I'll cut the fish." "We're in luck. We caught some crabs too." Olivia gathered some sticks and dried wood. She hastily brought the firewood back, but her stomach flipped. What happened? The man, who was cutting the fish, dashed over to her. Crouching on the ground, he looked anxiously at Olivia. Olivia didn't throw anything up. She caressed her stomach, her face pale. "It's nothing. I just feel a little uncomfortable. It happens a lot." "Is it very painful?" A drop of water fell on her face. Looking up, Olivia met the man's eyes underneath his mask. Drops of water kept sliding off the ends of the man's hair. It was only then that she realized she was almost completely in the arms of the half-crouching man. The man's heat mingled with the moisture in the air as it crept onto her body. The suggestive atmosphere slowly rose between them. They weren't touching each other. But Olivia still felt uncomfortable about the close distance. Jack seemed to notice this as well. He backed away in haste. It was only then that Olivia said, "It doesn't hurt. I just feel like vomiting a little." When Martha heard that Olivia wasn't feeling well, she came over to see her. She asked in the local dialect, "What doesn't feel right? Maybe you've gotten sick." Olivia shook her head. She knew that it was a recurring problem. She just happened to have run out of gastric medication and painkillers. "I'll make something light for you to eat. Jack, go and buy medicine from one of the islands around us." "I'll go with you, Jack." Wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, Tom followed as well. Jack left in a hurry with the talkative Tom. Taking Olivia's hand, Martha said, "Don't worry. The islands nearby don't have a lot of resources, but we can still buy gastric medication from them." Olivia looked at the sky. The weather was great, and even the sea breeze was gentle. But for some reason, Olivia felt anxious as if something big was about to happen. The cherry trees on the slope had already budded, and the flowers would bloom in a few days. According to Jerry, she should wait until the sea breeze comes. The entire island would be surrounded by beautiful cherry blossoms then. On moonlit nights, the islanders would hang a small lamp under the cherry trees as they admired the moon. The scenery was beautiful to the extreme. Olivia, who used to have wonderful fantasies, was no longer in the mood to wait for the flowers to bloom. Jack had already arrived at an island nearby. He noticed that the atmosphere on the island was different from before. There were some helicopters on the island. The islands in the region were extremely poor, and they rarely received any tourists. How could there be helicopters, then? Tom had always been a sociable person. He grabbed a handful of melon seeds from his pocket, then stopped a random passerby. He asked, "Sir, what's going on? Is some millionaire here on a vacation?" Chapter 154. You haven't heard, have you? There have been helicopters flying around these parts for the past few days. Everyone in the helicopters wears black clothes and sunglasses. It's just like what they show on TV. Jack knew that something was wrong. Ethan must have come looking for Olivia. Hastily entering a small pharmacy, he bought the stuff they needed. Tom rushed in. "Bad news, Jack. The helicopters took off. They seem to be headed for our island." Taking the items, Jack said with a cold expression, "Hurry. We have to get there before they do." Tom looked at the helicopters above their heads. He sullenly gritted his teeth. "Damn, it's much faster to fly than to go by sea. They've gotten so much farther ahead of us in such a short amount of time. Jack, hurry up and..." Tom wanted to urge Jack to hurry up, but he noticed that Jack was trying so hard to start the engine that it smoked. The boat leapt across the sea, sending huge splashes as it went. The speedboat was at its limit. Jack stared at the helicopters in the sky. There was a cold look in his eyes. The helicopters and the speedboat were like a barrier between Ethan and him. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up to Ethan. But even so, he had to rescue Olivia. On the island, Martha made some oatmeal for Olivia. After blowing on it, she brought it to Olivia. "Eat it while it's hot, girl. It doesn't matter if you have a child or not, you have to take care of your body. You have to eat something even if you don't feel like it." "Thank you, Martha." Olivia ate a few mouthfuls of the oatmeal. She was still nervous. Before she could eat more, she heard the sounds of propellers coming from the sky. Jerry also noticed the helicopters in the sky. "Miss Olivia, look, there are so many helicopters." Olivia started to panic. The bowl in her hands fell to the ground. She leaned against the doorframe, mumbling, "He's here." Olivia had spent a peaceful time here, but she knew that this day would come sooner or later. Without another thought, Jerry grabbed Olivia's hand and ran toward the forest. "Don't be afraid, Miss Olivia. Even if they come here, they can't be sure that you're on this island as long as you hide. We've already told the villagers about it. No one will betray your location. Those people will naturally leave when they can't find you. Despite that, Olivia felt even more nervous. It was Ethan, after all. He hated accidents most of all. If he were just searching, the helicopters could be split to the surrounding islands. This would save more time. But the helicopters had come here together. This meant that he was confident that he could find her. If she hid, wouldn't she be causing trouble for the islanders? While she was worrying, the helicopters circling in the sky had found a place to land. Stop looking, Miss Olivia. Hurry and hide in the mountains. Don't worry, they won't find you there. Olivia hid in the hut. Then, she used the telescope in the hut to observe what was going on. Everyone was curious about the helicopters that had suddenly visited the island. One after the other, the helicopters landed on a relatively flat piece of land. The hatch opened. Brent and Kelvin peered at the surroundings on the island through their sunglasses. The rest of the bodyguards stood in a row. They wore bulletproof vests and were equipped with guns. After making sure that there was no danger, Brent guarded the hatch. Olivia panicked. Did Ethan come in person? She thought. The thought had just crossed her mind when she saw a small tender hand reaching out from the hatch. Right after that, she saw Ethan in a black wool coat. His body was slender and tall, and he stood upright. In his arms was Connor, who was wearing a panda-themed onesie. Chapter 155. Olivia finally knew why Ethan was so confident that he would find her. Even though Connor couldn't speak, he wasn't a fool. He had lived on this island for a week, so he recognized it. Thus, Ethan didn't have to waste his time searching every island. He only had to find the island that Connor reacted the most strongly to. Just like right now, even before Connor got out of the helicopter, he waved his limbs excitedly. He kept mumbling, "Mama, Mama, Jerry, Kitty." He said all the words he knew. Carrying Connor in one arm, Ethan smiled coldly. Looks like this is the place. Everyone stood ready for action. The other party had used firearms before, so they didn't dare take it too lightly. Kelvin had also stopped smiling like he usually did. He said something over the communicator. Soon, warships appeared on the surface of the sea. They proceeded to surround the island. Snipers were positioned high above. Other members of the special forces slid from the ropes of the helicopters into the forest. They were all wearing bulletproof vests. Olivia didn't expect so many people to be summoned just to look for her. She knew that the Millers had an unusual identity, but even this was a surprise to her. The man standing at the top of the business empire could easily summon armies as well. As time passed, more ships, helicopters, and special forces arrived on the shore. It was just a matter of time before they found her. Connor was so excited that he struggled to get out of Ethan's arms. After making sure that the area was safe, Ethan let him go. Good boy, let's look for your mommy. A confident look appeared in Ethan's eyes. He thought, try escaping now, Olivia. Connor acted like a military dog. He was very familiar with the island, after all. Kelvin kept shouting, slow down, Master Connor. Careful, you might fall. Connor dashed forward with his baby steps. He tripped and fell from time to time, but he quickly got up and continued running. When he spotted the cat, he ran over to it and mumbled, Kitty, Kitty. Ethan signaled with his gaze. Following the cat, Brent approached a family. Martha was cleaning up the mess on the ground. Brent showed Martha a photo of Olivia. He asked politely, Ma'am, have you seen this woman before? Shaking her head, Martha spoke in a dialect Brent couldn't understand. Running up to the door, Connor dashed toward Martha. Granny. Martha was about to explain when a tall man walked up to her. There was a cold look on his face, and he gave off a stern air. Ethan said in a low voice, Ma'am, I don't mean to offend you. I'm only here for my wife. I hope you'll cooperate with us, or... Ethan added, I can't guarantee the sort of disrespectful actions I might take against you. The intense pressure he gave off sent chills down Martha's spine. Even so, she waved her hands, explaining that she had never seen this person before. Ethan was no fool. He could see through a person's act right away. Connor was very familiar with the island. He didn't even look at the houses around him. Instead, he followed the cat here right away. This might very well be the place Olivia stayed at. Connor couldn't understand why Martha ignored him. She used to treat him so well in the past. Ethan patted Connor's head, then said gently, "Connor, where's Mama?" Connor stopped mulling over it. Changing directions, he went to the room where he and Olivia used to stay. Martha wanted to stop him, but Kelvin's tall figure blocked her path. "Excuse us, ma'am." Chapter 156. Ethan opened the wooden door. The room had a simple layout, and all the furniture was made of wood. There was a small bed in the room, and a drawing board was placed next to it. The picture showed cherry trees under the moonlight. The island looked especially quiet in the moon's glow. The artist was extremely skilled. From a glance, Ethan could tell that Olivia had drawn the picture. He was overjoyed when he confirmed it. He had finally found her. There was also a thick pile of drawings at the side. Ethan calmly looked through them. A picture showed fishermen returning in the evening light. Smiles filled the faces of the women and children. There was a youth weaving straw hats while another painted in the morning sunlight. A man with a metal mask leaned against a cherry tree. Perhaps Olivia didn't mean anything when she drew it. But to Ethan, there was another meaning to this drawing. This was the man who took her away. Ethan had a cold air about him. He walked up to Martha with the picture in his hand. Then, he asked coldly, "Tell me, ma'am, where is she?" When Olivia saw Ethan entering Martha's house, she had the urge to go back. A hand grabbed her wrist tightly. Coming back to her senses, she realized that it was Jack. He had returned before she knew it. Olivia was panicking. "He's here. I know. Don't be afraid." Jack patted her head to comfort her. "I'll take you away. Come with me." Olivia's heart was in a mess as she panicked. She swiftly followed Jack down a path off the island, where a speedboat was waiting. She would be free as soon as she got onto the boat. But she was doubtful. Could she achieve true freedom? She turned around to look. Someone had already found traces of her and reported it to Ethan right away. Ethan's angry voice sounded over the speakers. "If you run away, Olivia, I'll burn this whole island to the ground." Her nightmares had come true. Ethan's voice clung to her tightly like a stubborn nightmare. Olivia's defenses were destroyed. She said in a trembling voice, "I have to go back." Jack said earnestly, "You still have a chance of survival if you leave now." Olivia replied, "At the cost of how many lives? This island doesn't exist on the map. The residents never even had proper documentation. Did you see those warships? If he claims that everyone on the island is a cruel terrorist, they'll just open fire. They won't even have to take responsibility for it." Frowning, Jack asked, "Who exactly is he?" "I don't know." Olivia only knew that on the night he rescued her from the sea, Ethan was wearing camouflage clothing. The warship nearby had just sunk a pirate ship. Flames leapt into the sky, casting shadows on Ethan's face. He looked like he was wearing a terrifying mask. After their marriage, he would occasionally leave on a business trip. Those trips lasted a few days up to a month. In those periods, she wouldn't be able to contact him at all. There was more than one scar on his body. He had scars from blades and even bullets. He never talked about it, and she never asked. She only had a vague idea that the Millers were influential like the Carltons. But she never cared who Ethan truly was. If she left, all the islanders would get caught in the crossfire. She had already cut off the path she used to take, so she couldn't go back anymore. While she was hesitating, Ethan had already approached him. He stood on the tall cliff, looking down at the world like a king. "Liv, I've said this before. You can't escape." Chapter 157. Olivia looked up at him. The sunlight shone on his body, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Instead, his eyes were filled with rage, mockery, and disdain. "What exactly do you want me to do, Ethan? Do I not deserve my own life anymore?" They were already divorced, but this man only got even more possessive of her. His possessiveness was so serious that it was almost perverted. Ethan's gaze fell upon the large hand gripping Olivia's wrist. When Jack noticed Ethan looking, he subconsciously stood in front of Olivia. Their gazes met. Jack didn't seem scared at all when he looked at Ethan. "You're already divorced. She doesn't want to go with you." Jack's movements and words made Ethan mad. Ethan's eyes were dark as he looked at Jack. There was an upset expression on his face. Even the air around him seemed restless. The sea breeze passed by, rustling Olivia's hair, which had grown a little longer. She was pale in the face as she hid behind the man. Even though Jack had a decent build, the black jacket he was wearing looked like it would tear soon. Ethan was suddenly pissed. This man was a far cry from him, but Olivia kept running away from him for the sake of this man. Out of habit, Ethan took a cigarette and lit it. His stance was lazy, but there was a cold and powerful air about him. Who are you to her? What right do you have to comment on our relationship? Jack was at a loss for words. But then, he quickly replied, we're friends. Friends? Ethan sneered. Befriending a kidnapper? You're quite something, Olivia. When he said the word, kidnapper, he sounded especially harsh. It's not what you think it is, Ethan. I can explain about the child. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Only coldness remained in his eyes. Come up here. The game was already over. His influence reached the whole world. Olivia had nowhere to run. Jack also knew that if Olivia went, only hell would be waiting for her. Don't go. He grabbed Olivia's wrist, trying to make a final stand. But he didn't realize that his actions had driven Ethan to anger. Olivia was used to the sound of guns by now, so she didn't scream. The shot was aimed at a spot near Jack's feet. If Olivia weren't standing in front of him, the bullet wouldn't have ended up there. Olivia hastily struggled free of Jack's grasp. She knew that the more she resisted and the closer she got to Jack, the worse their outcome would be. She stood next to Jack, thanking him. Thank you all for being with me, but this is the end. Jack wanted to step forward, but Olivia stopped him. Don't come any closer. She walked toward Ethan. Jack clenched his fists, but he dared not move recklessly. Several snipers around them were aiming at him. As soon as Olivia left, Jack would be shot on the spot with just an order from Ethan. Olivia knew what Ethan was thinking. He was never a kind person. Moreover, Jack had kidnapped Connor and injured Mina before. So, before Ethan gave the order, Olivia hastily ran into his arms. She knew that the man would succumb to tenderness. Thus, she softened her behavior and whispered, "Don't hurt him, please. He's a good person." Ethan lowered his eyes to look at her. There was a mocking look in them. "Are you begging me for the sake of another man? You've gotten bold, Olivia." He held her hand. As their palms touched, Olivia felt his burning temperature. She felt like it would burn her. Chapter 158. The scalding temperature seemed to spread from the back of her hand to every inch of her body. Olivia was terrified. "Ethan, the Islanders are good people. They took great care of me, and they didn't hurt Connor, not even a little. Connor loves it here. The kidnapping was a misunderstanding. I can explain." She didn't try to break free from his grasp. Instead, she begged earnestly, "I'll go back with you, so please let them go, okay?" With the cigarette between his fingers, Ethan caressed her head. He said in a cold voice, "Liv, why are you always making me angry? If you were this obedient from the start, we wouldn't have come to this point." Olivia suppressed her sorrow. She raised her pale face, forcing a smile as tears pooled in her eyes. "Okay, I won't run away again. Ever. Is that a promise? What do we do if you run away again?" Olivia silently looked at him. The tears in her eyes broke his heart. Still holding the cigarette between his fingers, he held Olivia's chin. The burning end of the cigarette was mere inches away from her skin. She could feel the heat coming from the cigarette. If she moved even a little, she would be burned. Olivia could only stay in place, allowing Ethan to speak in her ear. "Liv, if you run away again, I'll wipe this island off the face of the earth. I mean it." Olivia closed her eyes in humiliation, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I understand." As soon as she finished speaking, a kiss stole her breath. Without holding back, he forcefully invaded every inch of her. She didn't want it at all. There were at least 100 people around them. The sea breeze came in. With a tug, he pulled her into his arms. The cigarette fell from Ethan's hand as he deepened the kiss. Olivia was filled with embarrassment and humiliation. Ethan knew that, but it didn't mean anything to him. With this, he would show Jack who Olivia belonged to. Sometimes, men wanted to win so badly that it was absurd. Right before Olivia suffocated, Ethan finally let go of her. Then, he glared coldly at Jack before taking Olivia away like a victor. Olivia knew very well that this was just the beginning. Ethan wouldn't let her off the hook so easily. "Mama!" Connor ran toward her from a distance away. When Connor scrambled up to Olivia, Ethan reached out and picked him up. "Go play at the side." Connor pouted in dissatisfaction, but since his father had stopped him, he dared not disobey. He could only look at Olivia pitifully. He had no idea that Olivia couldn't even protect herself. She was unable to help him. Ethan handed the child over to Kelvin. Then, he took Olivia into her room. When the door clicked shut, Ethan forced Olivia against the wall. Olivia subconsciously tried to struggle. Ethan gripped her hands and raised them above her head. The man's leg was wedged between hers so that she was completely trapped. Ethan grabbed her chin, then whispered in her ear, "Did you fall for that kidnapper?" When Olivia heard those mocking words, she was extremely upset. She glared at him. "I didn't fall for him. I just hate you." The words pierced Ethan's heart when he heard them. His half-closed eyes were filled with coldness. "What did you say?" Chapter 159. Olivia knew that she wouldn't be able to escape this time. So, she stopped being wary like she used to. Looking Ethan in the eye, she spoke in a sterner tone. "I hate how arrogant and inconsistent you are. You're the one who didn't want me anymore, but you're also the one who refuses to let me go now. You said that my father owes you for your sister's life. Now, the Fordhams have gone bankrupt, and my father is constantly in critical condition. I've also sacrificed my marriage and my child. Is this still not enough for you? If so, then just take my life as well." When she said that, she noticed Ethan's gaze turning colder. In reality, Olivia felt quite nervous. Her heart pounded along with her worked-up emotions. She continued, "When you're in a good mood, you give me $1 billion and allow me to leave. When you're in a bad mood, you turn around and start looking for me again. Ethan, I'm human, not some toy in your hand. Do you know why I'd rather stay on a remote island instead of going back to the bustling city? Because everyone here treats me like a human. They respect me and help me find meaning in life." Ethan tightened his grip. To him, Olivia had simply fallen for someone else. Just because he was slightly nicer to you, you'd do anything for him. You even betrayed me and forgot all about our contract. You're as naive as always. Olivia frowned. What is wrong with this man? She thought. I don't. Do you know his identity? Are you aware of his intentions? Nothing in this world is free. You should know what happens when a moth flies toward a flame. Olivia was upset with the way Ethan described Jack. Yes, I don't know his past or his identity, but there's one thing I know. Unlike you, he won't hurt me. When Ethan saw Olivia trying her best to defend another man, his expression sank. He was like a beast revealing its terrifying fangs. I said before that you would be punished if you did something wrong. You'll pay a huge price for your betrayal. With that, he let Olivia go and turned to leave. Olivia knew that she was in deep trouble. She couldn't care less about her own life. But she had formed bonds with Martha, Jerry, Jack, and the Islanders. Olivia hastily wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. She begged, Ethan, I'll go back with you. Please don't harm the Islanders. Ethan's face was tense as a sharp coldness appeared in his eyes. It's too late. With that, he reached out and pried Olivia's fingers off of him. Olivia, if that man dies in front of you, will you finally be obedient enough? Olivia was deeply regretting her actions. She shouldn't have confessed her truest thoughts. Ethan had already given her a chance. As long as she submitted to him, he would have let everyone else go. Ethan, please don't do it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. She wanted to take his hand, but Ethan grabbed hers first. Then, he dragged her outside. Jack was surrounded by several men. He didn't dare move a muscle. He feared that even a slightly heavier breath from him would give them a reason to pull the trigger. He had always been good with enduring. He knew that Ethan wanted to make an example of him. If not, Ethan would have attacked him on sight. He was waiting for a chance to fight. But now wasn't the time. When he saw Olivia being taken into the room, He didn't know what sort of terrors she would have to go through again. He was anxious, but he mustn't make any reckless moves. Chapter 160. Jack knew about crazy people like Ethan. If he showed too much concern about Olivia, he would only be putting her in danger. Soon, the door to the room opened. Jack watched as Ethan dragged Olivia out with him. Olivia looked so fragile, but Ethan didn't seem to pity her one bit. Jack subconsciously tried to move forward. Brent reminded him in a cold voice, "Don't move." Jack looked at Olivia in worry. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. A gun had appeared in Ethan's hand. He looked high and mighty as if he were some gods that controlled others' lives at will. "Watch closely, Liv. He died because of you." Olivia was terrified. She didn't know what she could do now to stop Ethan's frenzy. The more she begged, the more it would stoke Ethan's murderous intent. But even if she didn't beg him, he would still do it. "What should I do? What on earth can I do?" she thought. At that moment, a clear voice rang out. "Go to hell, you criminal." It was Tom's voice. He had been hiding and lying in wait for a chance. Jack had taught him how to use a gun before. But since guns were dangerous, Jack usually forbade him from using them. Tom innocently thought that the crisis would be resolved if Ethan died. Then Olivia would be free again. The bullet didn't come from Ethan's hand. Instead, it came from the gun Tom was holding. Tom was hiding in an overlooked corner. The gun was aimed at Ethan, but Tom wasn't very good at shooting. Because of his panic, his aim was off. The bullet whistled through the air as it headed right toward Olivia's chest. No one expected the sudden turn of events. They didn't think that the child would have a gun. When Olivia saw the bullet, she was already pulled into an embrace. She could smell the familiar wooden scent. It was just like Ethan's personality, reserved and cold. His tall figure not only blocked off the snowy wind for her, but it also blocked the bullet. "Ethan." Olivia looked at him in panic. At that moment, her emotions were in a mess. All her thoughts centered on Ethan. "Are you okay? Does it hurt?" Olivia got out of Ethan's embrace. She saw that the bullet had pierced the black wool coat and hit the bulletproof vest underneath. She sighed in relief. It was also at that moment when all the snipers aimed at Tom instead. Olivia hastily said, "Don't shoot. He's just a child." Ethan reached out his cold fingers to touch the tears in the corners of her eyes. He said, "A young beast with fangs is still a beast in the end. Liv, if I hadn't worn a bulletproof vest today, either you or I would have died." Leaning in her ear, he whispered, "Having mercy on your enemies is the same as being cruel to yourself." Ethan's voice was soft, and Olivia couldn't sense any emotion in it. But she knew that he was mad. He was furious. Other than matters that concerned her, his mood swings were quite severe. When he faced other people, the angrier he was, the calmer he appeared. Olivia hugged him tightly, begging in her soft and humble tone, "Ethan, Tom didn't mean to harm me. He's just a child. Don't hurt him." Connor didn't know why Olivia was sobbing so much. When he saw her crying, he also felt sad. He immediately started wailing as well. "Daddy, Mama." Connor's wails distracted Ethan's thoughts. The child tottered toward Ethan. Ethan picked the child up. Connor and Olivia were sobbing on either side of him. He was greatly annoyed. He had no choice but to compromise. "Fine, I can let the child go. But Ethan glared straight at Jack. His voice was cold as he continued, "Must die."